say, it's been nice talking on the telephone, but this
Yes,
is,
indeed.
you know, with the camera, and welcome very much to public access.
Well, thank you very much indeed, Mr. Channer. It's a pleasure. I've long admired your work, as you know, and it's a pleasure to be here.
Well, okay, good, and welcome very much in the audience to Conversations. The guest today is Hugh Hamilton. He's the host now of, many in New York City will be aware, of a 3-hour, 4 times a week program on WBAI called Talk Back, which has a great and growing audience and so forth. And Hugh, welcome very, very much to Conversation.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
Okay, I wonder if you could share your own background, born and raised. You got an interesting background, and then we'll talk about the human condition and the state of politics and so forth. But your own background, please. Sure.
I'm not very good at talking about myself, so please feel free at any time if there's an omission that you notice might be glaring. Feel free to nudge me in that direction. I was born in Guyana, which your listeners or your viewers would know is an 83,000 square mile country that's on the northeast shoulder of South America, bounded by Venezuela to the west, Suriname to the east, Brazil to the south.
One of the three Guyanas it was, yeah?
Yes, that's right. There used to be British Guyana, which is the Guyana in which I was born. That became politically independent of Britain in 1966.
Right.
To the east, what is now Suriname used to be French Guyana. And farther east is Cayenne, which is an overseas department of France, otherwise known as French Guyana.
It's an interesting country, 750,000 more or less.
Yes, that's the official census.
And it's a great biodiversity and so forth. And it's got an interesting ethnographic or population also.
Yes, very much so. We speak of ourselves as a land of 6 peoples or of 6 races of people. You know, races, of course, as we know, an artificial construct, but for purposes of general everyday conversation, we refer to ourselves as a nation of 6 peoples. The original inhabitants, the indigenous population, we refer to as Amerindians. Those would be the people who are native to the country.
Arawak?
That's right, and a number of other Amerindian ethnic groupings.
It was discovered by Columbus from the Western European realm.
Yes, that's right. Or as Parry and Sherlock point out in their short history of the West Indies, which is one of the textbooks that I had to use in the very early 70s when I was in high school. What Columbus did was that he discovered, he disclosed to Europeans the existence of a country that already had been there and already had been populated, of course.
Exactly right.
Prior to his arrival.
You know, and it's really interesting in a way because we all come out, we're all African, we all come out of Africa 200,000 years ago, and there were migrations moving eastward, and the peoples that had gone eastward had gone something like 95% of the way around the world toward the east, across Bering and down into the Amerindian people in Brazil. Had gone 95% of the way around the world. The European-based cultures, you had the Phoenicians and so forth, and, but until Columbus, they hadn't gone but about 40 degrees of longitude to the west of the place. They hadn't gone very far to the west at all. So Columbus was meeting the eastwardmost and westwardmost extensions of mankind in the Bahamas and in the Caribbean.
Yes, indeed. Quite so. And you know, one of the fascinating things about global anthropology is the degree to which people are so much more alike than we are different. Unfortunately, in contemporary political discourse and economic discourse, we tend to focus on the differences. But once you get into societies and you take a look at the mythology of the society, the way societies are organized, indigenous, social and political and economic arrangements and institutions, there's a remarkable degree of commonality between and among societies throughout the world.
Yeah, it's true. We're all of a... And the Vedics have been, and it's interesting because you have a huge Hindu population. Everyone talks about that. But the Vedics have been telling us for a long time that reality is all one seamless web. Everything is interconnected to everything else right through time, and it's all one system, really, that exists in terms of this universe. So there's a universality about things like that. But it is interesting also, I find, I read some research about it, it was British, but you had Amerindian peoples there, and then you had and you have a large admixture of Hindu or Indian,
yes,
and also another subgroup that was, it's only something like 20% or something, no, 6% or 6/10 of 1% of Caucasian.
Okay, well,
and it's interesting that mix that you have there.
Well, what happened was, of course, the Europeans arrived. Shortly after that, the introduction of slavery, which, of course, occurred throughout the Americas. You know, one of the fascinating things when I talk to my African American friends about the experience of slavery is the degree to which the experience of enslaved Africans shaped not only the United States, but all of the Americas, because of the 10 or 12 million enslaved Africans who were brought to the New World, 90% were taken to Latin America and the Caribbean. So there is a very large and very strong presence. As you know, Brazil, for example, the country immediately to our south, has the largest African presence outside of the continent of Africa.
Right.
But then, through slavery, the enslavement of Africans, you had an African presence there. The British formally abolished slavery in 1834.
1834, okay.
That's right. Although that was followed by something they called the indentureship system.
Yeah.
It becomes a little technical, but the whole thing was aborted in 1838. And in 1838, we began to see the first of what were known as the indentured laborers, who were brought into the country. And it is from that source that the very large Indian population came, the first in-migration of Indians who, of course, at the time, coming from the nation India, which was the jewel in the crown of the British Empire, having been promised that if they would work for a certain amount of time, they would get certain benefits and they would also be allowed to repatriate. That never took place. But we also have Portuguese and Chinese who also were brought to the country as indentured laborers. So it's quite an admixture, as you point out.
There's a lot in all of that, you say, because you're saying indentured-tude. Is there a term? Indenture?
Yeah, indentureship.
Indentureship, but that's a little bit different than, say, slavery. Slavery is different. Indentured is a thing where you could work your way out of it eventually. So it's a little less onerous than, let's just say, the Marxists will talk about wage slaves. They'll say wage. They're really more like wage indenturitude. They're indentured by a system that keeps them responsible and in a state of submission to the people who have the major power and so forth, and political entities around the world. A little distinction.
Oh yes,
but you have a huge population of Indians.
Yes, indeed. In fact, the Indian population
from the country of India.
Yes, from the country of India. The Indian population right now, I believe, is the numerical majority in the population.
Yes, close to 50%.
Well, it's probably more than 50%.
More even, yeah.
Because from the time that those census data which you cited became available to now, there has been a very significant out-migration from Guyana, as indeed has been the case as well from much of the English-speaking Caribbean. In fact, I often remark that Guyana and the countries of the Caribbean are net exporters of human capital. Because, yes, that's right. It's probably our #1 export. In some countries, in Guyana, for example, and in Jamaica, it is estimated that well over 80% of people with a tertiary level of education live outside of the country.
Interesting, huh?
Now, one of the reasons for that, of course, is the well, it's not just Bangalore. It has to do with the fact that the intentional underdevelopment of these colonies by the British resulted in a situation after political independence in which you did not have the economic or structures to accommodate the very significant number of persons who were graduating from the educational institutions. The British invested to some degree in a pretty good education system. Because
in Guyana?
In Guyana and
Yeah.
in the Caribbean, because of course, unlike the United States, the British were largely absentee landlords. They needed to have a local population that could administer and manage British interests in the country.
Like, yeah.
That's right.
Yeah.
So there was a significant investment there. However, once the countries became politically independent, they were nevertheless still economically tied to the old colonial structures, which
because you kept in the Commonwealth. They were in the Commonwealth.
That's right.
Yeah,
we continue to be in the Commonwealth, and of course these developing countries were regarded by the colonizers as producers of raw materials, not of finished products. So you have the absurd situation in which a country like Guyana would export bauxite, which is a very valuable mineral resource. You, of course, as a geography professor, would know the value of bauxite.
Aluminum.
Precisely.
Yeah.
It is so aluminum is made from bauxite.
Yeah,
aluminum is, of course, very important for aircraft manufacture and for any number of other...
It's also a very big export for Jamaica, if I'm not mistaken.
Absolutely.
Yeah,
absolutely.
Right, yeah.
But these countries export bauxite and import pots and pans made of aluminum. You see.
Sounds like the English East Colony. What was it called? The English the East Trade.
The East India Company.
Yeah,
right.
Yeah.
That's right. So there is no value added in the local economies. As a result, of course, what happens is that as people graduate out of economic opportunities available within the country, they seek opportunities abroad. And since 1965, with the liberalization, so to speak, of American immigration policy, the introduction of a family-based immigration system here, you've had quite an out-migration from Guyana and elsewhere.
To America also.
To the United States. Before that, it was to Britain. Because, of course, after the Second World War, which a former Foreign Minister of Guyana, Rashley Jackson, used to refer to as the last European Civil War. After the Second World War, of course, there was a great need for labor in Britain. So Britain opened the doors to the former colonies because they wanted to have, they needed labor from India, from Pakistan, from the former colonies in the Caribbean and so forth. But then, sometime around the late 1950s, early 60s, they began to close that door. That coincided, however, interestingly enough, with the growing momentum of the civil rights movement in this country, and of course with the Civil Rights Act of 1964, the Voting Rights Act and so forth, the public conversation focusing on issues of democracy. What ended up for people who had been traditionally excluded from the mainstream here, what ended up happening quite inadvertently in a sense, was that the civil rights movement in this country created an opening for many immigrants who were skilled immigrants coming from the Caribbean as teachers, as healthcare professionals and so on. The very first member of my family who came here in the 1960s came here to accept a teaching appointment, brought her daughter who accepted a nursing appointment, and so forth. So as a result of that, that of course has continued since then.
Yeah, I want to go back. We want to get to that. You've written interesting. I was musing on why would people pick up from a place where they are and go to another land, like say back in the early stages of the United States of America. I suppose the well ensconced within the feudal system in Europe, people who are well ensconced would not probably think to pick up and go across an ocean and make a venturesome move into a new way of life and a new environment. Many of them were forced by political or religious oppression or something like that. They'd be like outsiders in a certain sense from the established societies. Just a thought. In terms of the way people move, that kind of thing. But back again, you had a leader of the country in the 60s or so who was Indian.
Yes.
Your airport's named after him.
Yes, Dr. Cherry Jagan. He studied dentistry at Howard University.
Really? Okay.
Yes, and he was married. His wife, Janet Jagan, formerly Janet Rosenberg, was a student he met here. She is from Chicago. So
he was of a Marxist persuasion,
absolutely,
if I'm not mistaken.
yes.
That was part of the politics of the mid part of the century. Yeah.
Yes, indeed. Absolutely. So Dr. Jagan became president of Guyana. He was the first. He was the first premier of the country. You know, the British had this system of letting go very gradually. So you had this system of internal self-government, you had a premier and so on, preceding full political independence. At the time of full political independence, Forbes Burnham became prime minister. He served as prime minister, later became executive president when the country became a republic. He died on August 6th of 1985, was succeeded by Desmond Hoyt, who lost the election right after that, and Dr. Jagan became president. After Dr. Jagan died, his wife Janet Jagan became president.
I think our CIA had a lot to do with what was going on down there in those days, because there was a threat. Was he seen as a threat by the powers that be to the north?
Yes.
Say, United States of America?
Very much so. As a matter of fact.
Along the line of Castro or something?
Along the line of Castro. In fact.
Or Venezuela in the current.
In the current. Yeah, that's right. In fact, Dr. Jagan was his government, which, remember, the country was not yet independent at the time to which I'm referring now, 1953. But Dr. Jagan was deposed, and the historical record now documents that extensively. The documents have been declassified from the CIA. Was deposed as a result of a CIA operation in 1953.
We can add that to Allende
and
Mossadegh in Iran.
In the same year as Mossadegh was deposed in Iran, the same operation that took place.
Blowback of which might be still roiling the waters of politics now.
Absolutely. Because, as you know, that was at the height of the Cold War, and with the partitioning of the world, so to speak, between the two poles, the United States on the one hand and the Soviet Union on the other hand. Dr. Jagan was avowedly Marxist in his political and economic orientation, and was seen as a potential threat, because he was seen as a potential ally who could open the door to Soviet influence in the U.S. backyard.
Which was a big part of the dialectic of what was going on in the Cold War and the major powers.
Yes, absolutely.
And he was strategically placed on the tip of the South American continent and everything.
Oh, yes.
He was very strategically placed, and it was interesting. Your airport's named after him.
Yes, it is.
A Marxist.
Yes, that's right.
That's right. But the development since, him, in that period, in the 50s and so forth, what's the status of things now as far as Guyana is concerned? Did you go to school there?
Yes, as a matter of fact, I did.
Maybe your own background and that kind of stuff. Back to your background.
Okay.
And then let's try to interlace it with the political evolving of the country of Guyana and the one that you were in association with, and move it sort of toward the contemporary.
Okay, great. Yes, I did go to school there. In fact, I moved to this country in 1987.
Okay.
I first came here in 1985 when on a fellowship to United Nations Radio, the Caribbean Radio Unit.
You had been in broadcasting there?
I had been in broadcasting in Guyana. In fact, broadcasting is, with the exception of an 8 or 9 year hiatus when I worked as legislative and communications director to 2 members of the New York City Council in the 1990s.
You continue in that?
I had been in, it is the job that I've done all of my life since I was 18 years old.
Full-time journalist?
Full-time,
yeah,
that's right.
And did you study that at university and things?
I had started at the University of Guyana. And
that's in Georgetown?
In Georgetown.
The major city, yeah.
That's right. In the middle of my second semester, my mother died, so I left to take care of my younger siblings as now the head of the household. And I've been very, very fortunate because right after that, I was given a series of opportunities. As I've had the opportunity not only to work in the field of broadcasting and journalism, but I've also been given the opportunity to travel extensively on assignment to various parts of the world, to meet colleagues and also to study with a number of very influential to me role models in the field of broadcasting.
Who are some of the people that have influenced you, if you want to mention maybe?
Okay, well, you know,
or opportunity jobs. You connected with the UN at some point?
Yes, the 40th special session of the UN in 1985, to which I was given a fellowship, so I came here to UN headquarters.
That's how you got here, yeah.
That's right. Worked in United Nations Radio under Cynthia Henry, who is originally from Belize. She was the head of the Caribbean Radio Unit. Gail Bindley Taylor Asante, who is originally from Trinidad and Tobago, and who was the deputy head of that unit. It was a wonderful opportunity. It was a great opportunity, for example, to have traveled to India 3 times to cover a summit of the non-aligned movement, summit of the Commonwealth, heads of government.
That was for the UN?
That was, no, that was for Guyana Broadcasting.
Guyana Broadcasting. So you had that connection still here with the Guyana.
Right.
And what had you done in Guyana? What was your connection with broadcasting in Guyana before you left even?
Okay, well,
I started... Were you in production? Were you in management? Or
reporter.
Reporter, okay.
That's right.
That's right. And didn't you go into Grenada? One of the earliest ones that went into Grenada after that invasion?
Indeed. In 1983, in 1983, I was among the very first reporters who were allowed to enter Grenada, courtesy of the U.S. military, which was based in which had set up operations in Barbados. So right after the invasion, and in fact, yes, right after the invasion, they took us into Grenada, a select number of reporters.
They? Who is they?
Meaning the U.S. military.
U.S. military.
That's right.
Okay.
You put your name on a roster, and they determined if they would allow you to go in. They airlifted you in. It was the only way to get in. So with the understanding that once you were in, you would, they would take you on a guided tour, and you would have to leave on the flight coming out.
They were like handlers.
That's right. Now,
you got to see through that, right?
That's, of course.
Right. Yeah.
So I got into Grenada.
Yeah.
Also with me on that same flight was a reporter from the Trinidad Express named Andy Johnson. So Andy Johnson and I conspired. We were not going to come back on the return flight. The thing is that most of the handlers were Americans, and most of them were white. Andy Johnson and I look very much like almost everybody in Grenada.
Okay.
The result is that once
you could just blend into the population like the fish that swim in the sea.
Precisely.
Mao said,
Precisely. So once we slipped past the perimeter, it was not possible to find us anymore.
Once you slipped free of the handlers, you could move.
You could move. That's right.
And you did some reporting?
And did some reporting from...
That was early on, too.
Very early on, right. Very early on, as soon as they allowed anybody to get in. That's right. So that was a great experience.
Yeah, that was right. Didn't you work with a thing called the Sun or something?
The City Sun.
City Sun.
Yes. The City Sun was a black newspaper based in Brooklyn. No, it is now defunct.
We got a Sun, but it's not the same. Yeah. Okay. Go ahead.
Yeah, that's right. The City Sun was a black newspaper established by Andrew W. Cooper. Who is a very important historical figure for another reason as well, which was that he, Andy Cooper, was the person who brought a lawsuit he brought the lawsuit that created the 12th Congressional District in Brooklyn that led to the election of Shirley Chisholm.
Oh, really?
That's right. Because before that, and this was shortly after the Voting Rights Act was passed,
65.
In 65, that's right.
Yeah.
Shortly, because before that, all of the districts had been so gerrymandered that the black populations of Bed-Stuy, for example, Bedford-Stuyvesant, had been partitioned among a number of other districts which were elected white representatives. But
Tom DeLay did a lot of that down in Texas.
Down in Texas,
yeah,
that's right.
Yeah, go ahead. I'm sorry.
So Andy Cooper, and here I digress a little, brought the lawsuit that led to the creation, the redistricting and creation of the 12th Congressional District, which produced Shirley Chisholm as the first African-American.
She ran for president?
She did run. She did run for president.
God bless her,
in
man.
1972.
She could have taken both Obama and Hillary out, right?
Yeah, in 1972.
Yeah, right.
That's right. She ran on the she ran as being on bot and something else.
Uncensored?
On bot and on something
Unbowed?
else. No, I don't remember the wording right now.
Yeah.
But anyway,
we'll find it.
We'll find it.
Yeah.
That's right.
Because I'm sure it's a good thing we could pick up on now.
That's right.
Yeah.
Another tidbit here is that Shirley Chisholm's father is from Guyana.
Is she?
Was from Guyana.
Wow, I didn't know that.
That's right. And her mother was from Barbados. But you know, there's a very long history of relations between the African American community and the Caribbean community. In fact, Professor Winston James, he used to teach at Columbia University. He has a book called Holding Aloft the Banner of Ethiopia.
Ethiopia?
Okay. Holding Aloft the Banner of Ethiopia, in which he documents extensively the very, very close relations and the role of Caribbean immigrants in the early 20th century to the radicalization of black politics in America.
Interesting.
That's right. But
Marcus Garvey?
Oh yes, Marcus Garvey and a number of others before him as seminal figures in
from the Caribbean.
From the Caribbean. That's right.
I think so.
That's
well,
right.
Stokely, a different.
Stokely
Carmichael
from Trinidad.
And he was a great force for progress. Yeah.
But coming back to your question about the City Sun. So the City Sun was established in the early 1980s. While I was, immediately before I came to the UN, I was working as the interim bureau chief of the Interpress Service News Agency in Guyana. Now, the Interpress Service News Agency is an international news agency headquartered in Rome. Here in New York, the Global Information Network is their official distributor. It is, I think, the 6th largest news agency in the world.
That's very interesting.
And I was the interim bureau chief in Guyana. So when I came to the UN, someone called Utrice Lead.
I know that.
Yeah, she was the managing editor of the City Sun.
I have a feeling I did a program with her way back when. I'm not sure. Maybe wrong.
It is entirely possible.
Yeah.
That's right. And said to her, you would not believe who I'm sitting next to right now here at the UN. And she said, who? And the person said, Hugh Hamilton. So she said, she said, you must come to see me. It turns out that the Sun had been carrying my stories, reporting from Guyana and from the Caribbean. Well, they were subscribers to IPS, to the news agency.
Right.
So my byline was appearing in the paper for years.
So your reputation preceded
me. That's right. So, so she said to me, if you come back to this country, if we'd love to have you. She offered me a job. I took the job. I became international editor of the City Sun. I also did a number of very critical pieces, including a series of 28 and 32-page supplements, special supplements, dealing with specific issues. For example, there was one...
32 pages, a lot of
32
supplement, brother.
That's right.
Yeah.
I worked very closely. What would happen is we'd create this special assignment and focus on it for a couple of weeks and do a really big story. One such story was called Uptown Echo Blues, which dealt with environmental racism in Harlem.
You're aware of the biodiversity in Guyana. It's amazingly important.
Oh, yes.
Yeah,
oh,
yeah,
yes.
yeah, but I didn't take you astray. Yeah, okay.
Yeah.
Eco Harlem's and
yeah.
eco being like ecology.
From ecology,
right.
that's right.
Okay, good, yeah.
So dealing with environmental issues of environmental racism and environmental justice in Harlem. Another big one was Hidden Exiles No More, taking a look at the Haitian diaspora in New York and in Florida, and how the Haitian diaspora was adjusting. You would remember this was a time of great upheaval in Haiti, and so on.
Haiti, yeah, it's just
that's right.
Yeah,
and several other major pieces. So I was very proud of my work at the City Sun, which was it was a very aggressive newspaper. In fact, there's a professor now at Hampton University. His name escapes me at the moment, I'll remember. But he's working on a book on Andy Cooper and the City Sun. And that, I think, should be out in 2009.
That's great. That'd be the basis of a heck of a movie, wouldn't it? You could make movies. I tend to think cinemagraphically, but
that's great.
And then you took a hiatus for a while to work with the city council members, right?
Yes.
From journalism.
From
You've been
journalism.
full-time journalism mostly.
Yes.
But you took a hiatus. Maybe you want to talk to that a little bit or not?
Okay, sure. In or about the very early 1990s, I think maybe 1991 or thereabouts, I went to work for Una Clark. Now, Una Clark was the first woman from Jamaica, the first Jamaican-born member of the New York City Council, the first person born in Jamaica and elected to the New York City Council.
Good for her.
Yes.
Yes.
Now, so for a period of about maybe 9 years or so, so it could have been from 92 to 2001. I left the council in 2001, in December of 2001. So, and during that 8 or 9 year period, I worked as legislative director and communications director, first for Una Clark, who represented the 40th district, council district in central Brooklyn, and then for Dr. Lloyd Henry, who was also a city council member, and he was born in Belize. He represented the adjacent 45th council district.
You got a base in the middle of Brooklyn.
In the middle of Brooklyn. Now, how did these two come to be elected to the city council?
Belize?
That's right. Someone from Jamaica and someone from Belize.
The Caribbean's moving in.
Well,
and well, they ought.
Yes, indeed. It was reflective of a significant demographic. It was a recognition of demographic trends that were taking place within the city of New York.
Absolutely, and within the nation.
And within, that's right.
Yeah.
You, of course, would recall that there used to be a time.
Belize was British?
Yes, Belize also
Guyana
used to be
British. Yeah, okay.
That's right.
English.
English,
Yeah,
yes,
okay,
British
right,
colony, former British colony.
Right. English language.
English language,
Yeah, okay,
that's
yeah.
right. You, of course, would recall that we used to have a system of government here in New York City in which there was the mayor, there was the city council, and there was something called the Board of Estimate. The Board of Estimate was made up of representatives of each of the 5 boroughs, and the Board of Estimate was where the locus of power really lay in city administration.
Okay.
However, as you know, the 5 boroughs of the city have very disparate populations in terms of size. Brooklyn, the most populous, has about 3 million people. Queens, about 2.5 million people. Staten Island, just about 500,000. So someone challenged the constitutionality of the composition of the Board of Estimate, because each of the boroughs had 1 vote on the Board of Estimate. And it was found by the Supreme Court to be a violation of the 1 person, 1 vote principle because of the disparity in the sizes of the populations. So the Board of Estimate was abolished. And the City Council, which at the time was 35 members,
about 50 now.
Now 51.
51, okay.
That's right.
Yeah, okay.
The City Council was expanded from 35 to 51 members in a very major historic redistricting process. And part of that allowed for the creation of these districts, such as the 40th and the 45th, in which the majority population or or a significant, a politically significant percentage of the population was of Caribbean heritage or ancestry. Now, this whole question of heritage and ancestry, of course, is a tricky one, because it doesn't mean everyone came from the Caribbean. We're also talking here about people who identify with the Caribbean heritage, although they would be maybe first or even second generation Americans born to Caribbean parents, immigrants.
That's very interesting.
Yes.
Yeah, Santeria, or yeah.
Yes, yes.
Ethnic connection.
Ethnic connection, absolutely.
Right.
And
Okay,
cultural as well.
And cultural, yeah, absolutely, sure. Yeah, right.
Yeah.
So you worked with them.
Yes.
For quite a while,
For quite
and
a
you were
while.
doing communication and general legislative lobbying. Position papers. What were you
Position
doing?
papers. I wrote the major speeches. I did legislative analysis, which means if someone, suppose you believe that there was an issue that required the attention of your council member, and you approached the council member on that matter, I would research the issue to see whether it is addressed in any of the existing statutes or ordinances, and
brief the council member.
And brief the council member.
And liaison with you.
And you would liaise precisely.
Okay.
And
that's an important function.
Oh yes.
In terms of the system in large.
Oh yes.
Yeah.
Because when council members want to introduce a bill, for example, although the council itself has a staff of attorneys and analysts who policy analysts who specialize in this field, there is a process that has to occur before the legislation is actually drafted. There's the whole process of research and dealing and figuring out whether this is something that is politically feasible, what the likely implications are going to be, what the cost, if any, might be, whether you can get the political support both within your district and from other council members.
It could enlist very easily the journalistic skills you would develop.
Oh yes, yes.
Because they're sort of sister things. It's
absolutely.
Yeah, I can see where that would be something that would have attracted you.
Oh yes.
Yeah.
Oh yes.
And take good use of your training.
Yes, and it was a great opportunity, I thought. And every journalist who covers politics should have that opportunity. I thought it was a great opportunity to look at how the sausage is made on the other side.
That's the thing we're not supposed to ever look at.
Yeah, I know.
Yeah, they don't want you to see that.
I know.
Yeah.
That's right.
Or how legislation is made. Yeah.
That's right. Because when you spend your life covering the political process, most reporters who cover the political process have no idea what goes on
really
within the political process.
Mr. Lyndon Johnson used to intimidate with his presence. I mean, he was a real pressure, and personality figures a lot.
Personality figures.
And a lot of it's at that every level of nuance and things that's hard to do, boss tweet. I don't know, yeah.
And quite frankly, the backroom meetings and the quid pro quos.
Those smoke-filled rooms had smoke in
That's
them.
right. Well,
yeah.
I think you weren't allowed to, if I remember correctly, the smoking ban came along somewhere along there.
I see.
But yes, figuratively speaking, of course.
Well, they've ruled smoking out of pool halls now, so I guess they ruled it out of political power.
I'm telling you, unless of course you're among the rich and famous, in which case you get an exemption.
If you're rich and famous,
that's
anything.
Right. then anything
and
goes.
So it seems to have been for a long time. Anyway, so you did that. Now we've got to keep moving, if you could. Trouble is, we only got an hour. That's the thing. When did you get involved with BAI and with radio and the incredible program that's got such an audience now and so forth?
Right.
Talkback.
Okay.
You can at least let's segue over that way.
Over to that. Yes.
Over to radio.
Well, for people who don't know the program, Talkback preceded my presence at the radio station. For years, it had been done by Utrice Lead.
Okay.
Who, after the City Sun folded, was hired by WBAI, and she did that program for years.
Okay.
In 2001, there was an upheaval at the station.
Okay. Politics.
Yes, that's right. There was a political upheaval at the station. Utrice became the general manager. As general manager, she could not because it's a union job, she could not continue to do that job. And I had on occasion before substituted for her. So she asked me whether I would do that on a more sustained basis, which I did, which is how I came to in front of
that microphone.
That's right, to occupy that position.
Had you done radio broadcasting before?
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah, you knew you had the ropes, okay.
Oh, yes, absolutely.
Yeah.
I'd done radio broadcasting for the Guyana Broadcasting Corporation. I'd worked for the Caribbean Broadcasting Union, but I'd done broadcasting for most of my life. So that's why I came to that position, although, as I said, I had done some substituting before, and also a couple of special programs for the Public Affairs Department, working with people like Sally O'Brien when she was head of Public Affairs, and of course the late Samori Marksman, who I knew very well.
Yeah.
Now, for people who don't know the program...
or maybe some people don't even know the listener-supported WBAI or Pacifica, which is maybe worth mentioning.
Which is indeed worth mentioning. WBAI is part of the Pacifica Network. The Pacifica Network is part of the Pacifica Foundation. It is a not-for-profit foundation. We have radio stations in Los Angeles, in in San Francisco, in Washington D.C., in Houston, Texas, and here in New York City. There are 5 stations, and we also have more than 200 affiliates. Okay. These are other radio stations that do not belong to the Pacifica Foundation, but wish to carry our programming and wish to be associated with our programming. The programming is progressive in its ideology, or
you have a lot of diversity among the people. I
absolutely.
understand there's a lot of infighting going on ideological grounds.
Well,
if I'm not like a group of Trotskyites.
Well, well, you know, if you get...
You know, how many angels can dance on the head of a dialectic interpretation of the movement of history?
Precisely.
Yeah.
You know, there are some people who say to me...
Which is fun in a way, but can get kind of touchy at times.
Yes, yes, especially when it imperils or when it imperils or has the potential to imperil the viability of the enterprise in which you work.
That's when it gets serious.
That's right.
When they're at the gate, huh?
But you know, WBAI, which is now which is now what, 46, 47
Mr. Hill?
Years old. Yes, Lou Hill.
Yeah, Lou Hill, San Francisco.
Right. Yeah. Lou Hill is the person who introduced the whole idea of listener-sponsored radio.
Right.
Which is what it is. About 90% of our funding comes directly from our listeners.
Okay.
So we hold fundraisers on the air and ask people to send money, and they do, and this is a wonderful thing. In this way, we are able to retain our editorial independence because we're not beholden to any of the corporate or commercial interests.
Okay.
We don't take money from any of the corporations. We don't take any commercial underwriting or any of that.
Right. We have a relationship here.
Oh, yes,
we have a franchise agreement with the cable companies that brings money to like the operation, but then you don't have to be having advertising. You don't have advertising on behalf.
No, we don't.
You don't have as listener supported, or you don't have to have the advertising interruption of things and all that, but you also have an independence that people can be allowed to say what they want. And if I'm not mistaken, we have an executive director, Dan Coughlin. He used to be the executive director of the Pacifica Network. That's pretty good training for
that's right.
a place. What has the problem been? You had a problem down there a couple of years ago or something where there was people laid off and there was a big fight. Is that worth talking about, or should we just...
Well...
There was a problem where Dan, I think, was let go, and Amy was there, Amy Goodman was there.
Well, I guess it would probably be worth talking about, except that I would not be the best person with whom to discuss it. And the reason for that being that I came into WBAI at what might be called the height of the Troubles.
Oh, the height of the Troubles.
Yes, I refer to it as the Troubles.
The Troubles.
That's right. So,
what was it about?
I resolved.
Okay.
I resolved at that time, and it has been my position since then, that first of all, not only did I not have the benefit of the background in order to discuss the matter then, but in the intervening years, much information has now become available to me, so I now have a much better understanding, right? I guess you can say it has been declassified. But I still do not believe that I am sufficiently authoritative in my understanding of the underlying issues.
You could take did you ever think you think you could get out of journalism and go into diplomacy? That was a very diplomatic answer,
well,
because it left everything open to. But you do also, and you understand what I'm saying. You become
right.
But you also do not take hardcore ideological positions in your program either.
That is correct.
You like to be able to go bridge the gaps between things and take a kind of overview of things, if I'm not mistaken.
Absolutely.
So that would let you completely off the hook in terms of having to make any pronouncement on which side is you on.
Well, thank you very much. I understand exactly what you're saying, and I'm glad you mentioned that, because I do promote the program not only as a gathering place for the free and fair exchange of information and ideas.
Wide range.
Heard Monday through Thursday from 3 until 5 in the afternoon, 99.5.
3 until 5,
3 until 5. From 3 until 5.
Oh, 2 hours. Oh,
2
okay.
hours, that's right.
Okay.
But not only that, and I also promote it as a forum, as a program that is dedicated to the advancement of the public understanding.
Okay.
And I'm very committed to the advancement.
That's a good lodestar.
Well, thank you.
Yeah, no, for anyone.
Yes.
I mean, in general, yeah.
Yes.
An important one now.
Indeed.
Amongst all the confusion of the spin and things, yeah.
Yes, indeed. And because of this, it requires me to challenge the conventional orthodoxies of both the left and the right.
You can make enemies all over the place.
Yes, indeed. But that doesn't bother me.
And if you know you're making the enemies, you know you're doing something right.
You know you're doing something right. That's right. You see, because when I started the program, many people wanted to know what my opinion was, what I thought. And I kept saying,
which side are you on?
That's right. It is not important what I think, you see. Let us examine the issues on their merit. You know, whether it is an issue like same-sex marriage or abortion, whether it is an issue of foreign aid, development assistance to foreign countries, whether it is the war in Iraq, whether it is American imperialism. I mean, let us discuss and debate the issues on their merit.
Okay, well, that's interesting. Let's say, how do you justify the war in Iraq? If you're going to, are you going to become a shill for Mr. Bush and Cheney and so forth? It's a little hard sometimes. Do you understand what I'm saying?
Oh, yes, I understand.
Because you're progressive.
Yes.
Overall, you're progressive.
That is
so
correct.
You're going to have a hard time standing with Adolf Hitler.
Oh, absolutely.
In Berlin, *39.
Oh, absolutely. I mean,
even though he's popular. You don't understand what I'm saying?
I understand what you're saying, and that goes without saying.
Yeah.
That goes without saying.
Oh, okay.
You see, the idea of leaving a space that is not cluttered by the armature of ideology is to facilitate the kind of discussion that could not occur otherwise.
Yeah.
Because ideology comes with its own baggage and its own vocabulary, and the vocabulary is very technical.
Right.
And you see,
and obfuscating.
Obfuscating, precisely.
Yeah.
And the truth is that most lay people, and by lay people I include myself, most lay people are not
ideologues.
Are not ideologues.
Right.
But it does not mean that we do not have an opinion, or that our opinion cannot or should not be part of the public discourse.
There's two different things in journalism in general. There's general reporting, what, when, where, how, and how, or what, you know, those 5 things, the facts man, as Joe Friday would say.
Right.
And then there's editorial journalism.
Yes.
There's a difference. Would you count yourself within the realm of the facts man, or would you venture into editorial stance where you take, and there's an off-cited ethic of editorial journalism. It says, bring comfort to the afflicted and afflict the comfortable. An off-cited ethic of editorial journalism Also the charge of the Gospels, one might add. But you note with alarming regularity, it's much more observed in the breach than in the observation.
Indeed.
If you can follow all
yes,
that.
Yes, indeed.
So you want to address yourself to any of that
sure.
in terms of yourself and your own editorial lodestar?
Sure.
Or your own news reporting or advancing of a progressive understanding, as you said?
Sure. I started like most good reporters should. You know, what, where, when, why, you know, and so forth. The 4 W's and the H, you know, and how. And I did that for years. And this is excellent training because it focuses the mind.
Yes, it does.
And it allows you to divorce yourself, and it requires or compels you to divorce yourself and your own experience from the, quote, objective facts. Now, a little later on in the process, though, one does come to the realization, and one comes to embrace the realization, as I have, that objectivity it might be a goal or an ideal, but it is certainly not something that is achievable in the human condition.
We all
simply
seem to have some idea of ethics and stuff that motivates our personality and our being.
That's right. So I would say, if I were to characterize my approach now to journalism, I would say that I have now come to embrace what I consider to be advocacy journalism.
Advocacy. Okay, spell it out.
Advocacy journalism.
Okay,
Now, by that I mean that I have a position, and what I do is I harness the facts, and I analyze the data with that position in mind. And let me see if I can think of a very practical example. Right now, I'm working on a couple of presentations I'll be doing over the course of the next several months. And one of the recurring themes in those presentations is the notion that there is no such thing as a neutral public policy. That public policy, regardless of the intent of those who design it, nevertheless has disparate consequences for different constituencies. You need to recognize that. For example, when I worked at the City Sun, that piece, the big 30-something page supplement dealing with issues of environmental justice, that was an effort to say that there is a part of the environmental debate that is not engaging the mainstream media, that has nothing to do with whales and mountains and pristine and you know, pristine mountaintops and so forth, and the preservation of trees. It has to do with the density of particulate emissions outside of people's homes, with the noise pollution, with the high rates of lead contamination, of asthma, and all of the related consequences of a toxic environment. It has to do with the fact that some communities are more likely to have recycling and garbage disposal facilities, sewage treatment plants, and so on, than some other. Bus depots and whatnot. And these things are placed in these communities as a matter of public policy. But that public policy has real, and in this case very negative, and in some cases disastrous effects on the lives of the people who live there.
And some more than others.
And some more than
As
others.
an animal farm, some people are suffering more than others.
More than others.
Yeah, right.
That's right.
Right.
So, as advocacy journalism says, there's a certain set of facts about the environment, and it is important that we recognize them. But it also says, let us see how this environmental debate, how the environmental movement is addressing this particular set of circumstances in this particular community, this particular constituency, and how can we reform that public policy so that it is not only cognizant of but also responsive to the concerns of that underrepresented constituency.
Do you ever take into account like zero sum, or zero sum is if one gains, another has to lose, trying to find solutions within a design or an application context where everybody wins? Or is that something that is beyond, is that just idealistic to think we can have patterns that can take into account all of the constituencies so nobody loses? Or Is the political dialectic intrinsic to all human affairs, that if somebody's going to gain, it's going to be at the cost of somebody else? Or do you understand what I'm saying?
Yes, I understand.
Are there chances for a non-zero sum answers to the larger questions confronting mankind?
I think in a universal
and its
sense,
environment in which we interaccommodate with the rest of the creatures.
I think in a universal sense, it is a zero-sum game. As long as we're dealing with finite resources and finite entities, you know.
Right.
If
and that's reality.
That's reality.
Yeah, that's being realistic, realpolitik, maybe.
That's right.
Yeah, okay. Yeah.
If we're dealing with a finite amount of water,
yeah.
What that means is that for every glass of water that you drink, it is one glass of water less available to me. You know, that's.
Yeah.
But it does. But that's in a larger universal sense.
Yeah. Yeah.
I think many of the issues that we are dealing with need not be seen through that lens, because the universe from which we are, the universe from which we are functioning as our reference point is so large,
and changing,
that it does not, we do not have to settle for a situation in which there could be a bus depot in my neighborhood or in your neighborhood. That does not it does not have to be an either or. You see, that's right.
Or a design. Let's get rid of the diesel.
Exactly. Think outside of the box.
Right.
Let's think outside of the box.
There's a lot of constituency for that way of thinking now, with all the things that's flowing in on that ecological question. But it's got philosophical implications for journalism or for understanding the human condition.
Indeed.
You enjoying your time at BAI? You got
absolutely.
A heck of an audience growing.
Oh, yes.
You're doing great in terms of. There's wide responses. It must be satisfying to get so much good positive response. I understand it's coming in over the transom with great regularity.
Yes, indeed, and it's a wonderful thing. I feel really very privileged to be doing this, and of course, thanks to this great opportunity to appear on your program. We are reaching, even as we speak, you know, an even larger and the audience of potential viewers who one would hope would take a listen at some point. I'm sorry.
Not only listeners.
Viewers. That's right.
We got to get our words straight.
I have to get. That's right. I have to stop thinking radio, think television.
I think we're in the same vineyard, brother. We got different things and everything. Well, listen, thank you. It's so good, really good talking to you.
Professor Channer, it's a pleasure. Thank you very much, and it's an honor to be here.
Well, it's an honor to have you here, my sir, my gentleman friend. I'm really happy to do that, and thank you very much for coming in, for all the good work. Once again, it's every Monday through Thursday.
Monday through Thursday from 3 to 5
on
WBAI 99.5 FM.
99.5 on your listener-supported radio dial. You can't do better.
That's right. And online at WBAI.org.
And you'll be able to see him here on hopefully more and more on public access cable television. I think we're in the same vineyard. And thanks a lot for such a well-led life. Really good talking to you. Your pleasure to have had his perceptions. We invite you to tune in. We'll be coming back conversations again tomorrow. And but once again, Hugh, great pleasure. Good to meet you. I think we're going to become friends now as we move into this world that we're going to have a helping hand in building. You know? And
I look forward. I certainly look forward. And at some point, I hope that you will be able to make some time to come down to the radio station, so that I can have you as a guest.
Anytime,
because
brother.
you have this very fascinating life that I've been reading about.
Well, it just goes on and on and on. Yeah. So thanks for viewing.